One Piece has some incredible writing. We all know this. Oda is a master of many talents, and he consistently uses that to his advantage in order to make the story better and better. At the same time, it's no secret that he has plenty of weaknesses. There are lots of things that other stories offer that One Piece just doesn't do as well. A fairly common criticism that I've seen online revolves around how Oda handles character development, or rather, how he doesn't. Generally speaking, characters in One Piece don't really develop in the way that we're used to seeing in fiction, especially the Strawhats. It's not non-existent, the Strawhats do showcase progression at various points. Also, there's nothing wrong with characters that are more static than they are dynamic. The effective execution of a character requires depth, motivations, well-rounded personalities, and meaningful dialogue, all of which can be achieved regardless of how dynamic they are over the course of a story. However, Oda does have a tendency to avoid significant changes in the personality of the Strawhats, particularly after the time skip. Sometimes it may even feel like they've regressed. I think that the criticism regarding character development is valid, and a lot of my personal gripes with certain Strawhats come from that same place. Even so, Oda's style of writing characters is a deliberate choice, and with all of the downsides that it brings, there are a handful of positives that go overlooked. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down how character development is handled among the Straw Hat Pirates, how it's changed over time, as well as some instances where it excels. Most of the character development in One Piece usually occurs in relation to perspectives and worldviews. When all of the Straw Hats are introduced, their behavior is indicative of their past circumstances. Through their backstories, we learn why they see the world the way they do. We learn about their many traits and flaws, as well as how they were nurtured. Within these backstories, we also see them grow and respond to the world around them. In the present, they get challenged by some sort of conflict that is tied to their flaws. Luffy and the other crew members will encourage them to confront these conflicts. This ultimately leads to some revelations that expand their worldview. Even though they get help, the Straw Hats always end up rising to the occasion on their own. Nami learns to rely on others by asking for help. Zoro learns how to be selfless. Sanji learns to prioritize his own needs. Usopp pushes himself out of his comfort zone. Chopper embraces his own self-worth. Frankie lets go of his guilt. Brook lets go of his past. Robin finds the will to live, and Jinbei learns to have faith in the future. Sometimes these developments happen much later after their introductions, like in Zoro or Robin's case, but they all have measurable growth. It's subtle, but it is there. Here are some examples. Robin goes from referring to the crew members by their roles to calling them by their names. She later exhibits more of her quirky personality traits and smiles much more often. This communicates that she has allowed herself to trust the crew and to be vulnerable around them. Chopper becomes less shy and commits to his unique transformations, indicating that he's become more comfortable in his own skin. Zoro's sacrifice in Thriller Bark shows us that his dream has evolved. In Enies Lobby, Usopp plays into his role as a sniper, and he challenges Rob Lucci without his Sniper King persona, which tells us that his insecurity as a crew member has been overcome, and that he is capable of rising above his fear. So, Oda concentrates character development around the time of the character's introduction, or he waits until specific narrative moments to challenge them in a way that naturally provokes change. Typically, these are small developments revolving around their past experiences and how they approach relationships with others. After that development takes place, Oda utilizes dialogue, minor behaviors, or even fights to illustrate that the characters are a bit different than who they were before. Every now and then, we get a moment or two that reveals a new point in their development, such as Sanji asking Robin for help, or Usopp unlocking observation haki. Unfortunately, these moments are few and far between. The bottom line is that the majority of characters in One Piece are relatively static. They're not one-dimensional, some are, but in general they have a lot of depth and complexity under the surface. It's just that their personalities tend to be continuous. This is by design. It's the nature of episodic storytelling. One Piece needs to be written so that Oda can return things to a status quo whenever he wants. It needs an anchor point for the audience. While the story is episodic, it's also an ongoing serialized narrative that is constantly moving forward. With all of the moving parts that contribute to that bigger picture, Oda needs to be able to pick and choose when and where he decides to progress the characters. This is especially true for post-Timeskip. not just because of how One Piece is designed, but also because Oda intentionally shifted the focus of the story. With the exception of Whole Cake Island, he made a choice to no longer dive into the personal stories of the crew, so that he could devote more screen time to the progression of the main plot and the world at large. As a result, many of the Straw Hats do lose some of their depth and struggle to have the same character-defining moments as pre-Timeskip. The extra attention given to the substantial cast of side characters doesn't help, although many of them are great additions with fantastic writing. While the Straw Hats don't really change significantly post-Timeskip, they do exhibit behavior related to their development that occurred pre-Timeskip. Luffy steps up as a big brother figure like Ace, Zoro remains vigilant of imposing threats, Robin continues to open up more, Nami makes peace with her past trauma, etc. However, the scenes that remind us of this are short-lived and, honestly, rare. At the same time, you have characters like Usopp and Sanji who perpetually ignore a lot of opportunities to develop even further. I know that it's a gag and that it's supposed to be unserious, but when Sanji got a taste of his own medicine on New Kama Island, I was pretty disappointed that he learned nothing and instead doubled down on his perverted behavior for a good while. With Usopp, he should definitely remain scared and cowardly, as it's crucial to him cultivating moments of bravery. However, I still think that he should show a little less restraint because of the danger that he's already overcome. At the end of the day, there's much to be desired when it comes to the character writing post-Timeskip. Although there's one aspect of Straw Hat development that is very underrated in my opinion. That is their development as a group. If you look at the Alabasta or Skypiea sagas, you'll notice that the crew is extremely scattered. They're still a team, but they frequently find it difficult to work together. They get frustrated and thrown off guard by Luffy's impulsive personality. At times, Luffy fails as a leader, but if you flash forward to the raid on Onigashima, the Straw Hat Pirates are not the same as before. They're still loose and chaotic, but they're no longer fumbling around. They move with confidence as a unit. Luffy is the same Luffy, and yet he's much more competent and commanding. This all stems from the conflict they faced in Water 7, and you can pinpoint numerous key moments afterward that contribute to their growing maturity. You have their synchronized teamwork in Thriller Bark, and obviously the devastating defeat of Sabaody and Marineford. After their Timeskip, the attitude and behavior of the crew during moments of high tension serve as reminders of their experience. In Fishman Island and Punk Hazard, the crew displays high morale and faith in each other. In Dressrosa, Luffy understood that separating the crew was the right call to avoid risking their lives. In Whole Cake, he made the split-second decision to smash the mirror portal to the Sunny and distract Katakuri in order to keep his friends safe. By the time the crew leaves Wano, they carry a presence that is worthy of their reputation. We even see further evidence at the beginning of Egghead. And when they get confronted with those responsible for their defeat 2 years prior, they no longer need to run away. By gradually learning to trust each other, they're eventually able to work together in a way that complements each of their personal strengths. While the Straw Hats may not develop individually, they do consistently develop collectively. So, is there character development in One Piece? Yes and no. It tends to happen in isolated parts of the story, with the successive changes being subtle. For the Straw Hats, the focus on their development fades over time, but they continue to grow in other ways. On the flip side, the personalities of these characters never really change, and they most likely never will, but they aren't meant to. The Straw Hats are intentionally written as static characters that can be developed if Oda chooses to switch things up. For the most part, the writing is still well-rounded and enjoyable even when it's not super dynamic. The problem comes when Oda introduces too many external elements that the Straw Hats fall to the background. With how drastically the overarching plot takes the stage after the Timeskip, many of the crew members fail to leave the same impressions they did in the first half of the story. It's not entirely a bad thing. Like I said, there's still some sense of character development amongst the crew, and the new characters that come along are awesome. It's merely a trade-off. Thankfully, Oda seems to be returning to his roots with the Straw Hats in the current arc, Elbaf. Based on how things have played out so far, I have faith that the crew will get some big moments to shine as the final saga unfolds. It's unlikely that they'll be very different from who they are currently, but I think that's okay, so long as Oda highlights what already makes them so great. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this for now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the discussion, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.